What's up, Young Justice fans and fans of the boys? I hope there's like an intersection between those two. I am Pete, and I'm with my good friend Brian, and we're going to talk about two of our very favorite superhero shows today. Brian, how you doing on this Friday?
Doing very good, Pete. I'm glad it's the weekend finally.
Hell
Although,
yeah.
you know what? I'm kind of sad that this was the last episode of Young Justice for a while.
Perhaps ever.
I read an article recently. I guess it was with Greg Weisman, and he said that like the numbers for this show were like really, really good. Some of the strongest for any animated superhero cartoons, and it said even competed with did better than some of the live action ones, although they didn't name what. So I think there's a strong possibility we'll be back. But
Nice.
the gaps between these shows are kind of big, so who knows?
Yeah. So you think it might have done better than like the live action Batwoman show?
Yes.
Or like the Cloak and Dagger show?
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually said high profile too, so I'm kind of wondering if that even means the Marvel shows.
Oh shit. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I would love for the show to come back. I was so happy with the last episode of Young Justice Phantoms, which we're talking about today, episode 26. It was just an action-packed finale. A lot of stories got tied up, storylines got tied up, and of course, there's the possibility of things coming up in the future. We're talking about episode 26 today. It's called Death and Rebirth. And then after that, Brian and I are also going to talk about the first 4 episodes of The Boys. Yeah. Brian and I usually talk on Thursday nights to kind of get those Marvel shows, and also if there's like a HBO Max show. But from this point on, we're actually going to be doing Fridays so that we can cover Ms. Marvel, we can cover Obi-Wan, and The Boys all together.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you ready to jump into some Young Justice?
Let's do it.
Oh shit! I gotta plug something real quick too. I'm actually wearing a Bunny Mask T-shirt.
Nice.
Yeah, Bunny Mask is a comic. It's probably the most successful comic from Aftershock, which is a company that I also work for on the side. And like so many people love this book. It's this cool horror book. And as an Aftershock ambassador, I just got a whole box full of these shirts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm going to be giving them to my local comic book stores too. So just figured I'd give a little shout out to Aftershock. So anyway, let's jump into some DC stuff. The log line for this episode was the very next final battle for the planet Earth. That was awesome. So, Brian, I don't have to eat Star-Lord.
Thankfully, yes. We kind of called this. We speculated that was he actually hurt? Did he actually have a concussion and then faked his lowered his heart rate? No, he cut himself and he lowered his heart rate. And he even called out that it was a wrestling trick and a Batman trick, which
yeah.
Classic Batman style plot armor. So
yes, and a total dick move. So what I was gonna say was that like I was okay with that because I expected that. Yeah. But you know me, I hate exposition dumps. And boy, was there an exposition dump right at the beginning of this episode, right?
Yes, it comes fast and furious, like you wouldn't believe it. And they've done this a lot with these arcs. There's always some part, really 1 or 2 episodes in each arc that has a huge exposition dump that's kind of awkward. But I mean, I guess, how else do you do it? You have these 2 groups that couldn't possibly know what the other one was doing at this point.
Right.
You have to do it so they understand they're all on the same page. But it's a little awkward to watch on occasion.
Yeah. I think they did a good job. The guy that plays Nightwing is awesome. The woman that plays Ms. Martian is great. I think they did a good job. It just was a lot, and like, oh, then you did this, and then you did this.
Yeah.
But
that would be also, by the way, that would be Jesse McCartney and Danica McKellar.
Oh, good. Yes, thanks to you for doing that, because the voice actors definitely do deserve credit. I mean, they've been with these characters for like over a decade, right? At this point.
Yeah, something about that. Yeah, like that. Yeah, and most of them voice like 5 characters.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I think that we need like an Elseworlds, like multiverse type story, just based on this one line that Dick Grayson says to Ms. Martian right at the beginning of the episode, right? Where he says, "You're a ball of sunshine hiding a terrifying goddess."
Yes. I could totally see an Elseworlds there, but I honestly think that that's something they're going to follow up on at a later time and in a future season.
Really?
It sounds. It was too specific and too out of left field I mean, we know she's powerful. She's done some amazing things before, but it sounds like it was a call out and foreshadowing to me.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting about this show because this show kind of is like the MCU where they'll draw upon storylines that are really old, like decades old, but then they'll also like draw upon like very current things.
Yeah.
And in the current DC universe, there was this big event. It was uh death metal, right?
Okay.
And so that's Scott Snyder, not Zack Snyder. Scott Snyder and his Justice League books, right? And one big component of death metal was that if you took humans and you merged them with Martian DNA, you would get this like ultimate apex predator type beings, right? And that kind of reminded me of that line that Dick said of like, you know, you're like the ultimate thing. And I could kind of see them doing something with that. I'm not sure though.
Maybe. I mean, didn't they do that with Lex Luthor though?
He was like the prototype, and then he like,
yeah.
Yeah,
that would be kind of interesting, I guess. But yeah, you know what? That's really the only thing I can think of that could be even related, because I have not read much with Miss Martian in the comics, in like the regular DC universe. Like,
No.
I don't think she's even appeared all that much outside of maybe ancillary Young Justice comics. She definitely exists.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. She's been in Teen Titans, but like they're barely shown anything. I don't think she's ever had like her own solo title or even like a limited series, you know.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, the Court of Owls. They've been in Young Justice, right?
Oh man, have they? Possibly. I feel like yes. I feel like they might have just shown them.
Yeah.
But they haven't really been involved that much.
Yeah.
Fuck, I feel like I need to look that up. But yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's keep the ball rolling. Keep that train rolling. Yeah, but the reason why I even bring up the Court of Owls is just because like that's a good example of it's like a very modern kind of storyline compared to the other stuff, and they kind of wedge it in there. I mean, they weren't like the major villain of any story arc. I think they were just in like an episode. I think they were in this episode that had like the Tim Drake Robin and like Spoiler and his team doing something.
It mentions there are some masks in an episode that resemble the Court of Owls mask, but I don't think it says anything about them being in an episode. So
Okay. All right, well, that's fine. That's me just fucking taking us off the rails when we should be talking about this big battle in Metropolis, right?
Yes. This was a great, huge battle, and you know, there's lots going on, but I think one of my favorite things to see was Superman and Superboy, who was finally kind of snapped out of it, fighting Zod and Zod Jr. I can't remember his name.
Lorzod.
Yeah, and that was awesome. Like that really like got me going. It's always great to see those two battle there, and you know, not end in a neck snap. So
Yeah. That whole sequence, it's just like this show gets praised for the action and like the different ways that they use powers and like the different sets of characters that you pair against each other. And I think this is just like the perfect example of that. You have all these different power sets going against each other. And like you can see like certain power sets don't work against each other. And then they like switch things. Like Dick gets to be a good leader at one point. Kaldor, I think, gets to be a good leader at one point. You see like characters' strengths, you see characters' weaknesses. Just a really great battle sequence overall. And devoid of, we thought that we were going to see maybe the Outsiders show up and the Infinitors, and they just weren't even there.
Nope. They kind of left. Well, they sort of wrapped up some of the stuff with Beast Boy, but they did not touch upon the Infinitors and what's going on in Markovia. So that's another plot line that's going to have to be answered next season, amongst the many things that they seeded in the end of this episode, kind of like the epilogue scenes.
Yeah. So that was your favorite, was like Superboy and Superman versus Druzod and Lorzod?
Yeah, pretty much.
I liked that Danny Chase was still alive, and I like that Saturn Girl like came into his mind and helped him fight against Malal Falak or whatever the fuck his name is. Yes,
that was good too.
Yeah, there's always like a sequence when it comes to like mental battles, right? There's always a sequence where someone goes into someone else's mind and then gets like really big and then steps on the right, because didn't Saturn Girl do that?
No, Danny did it.
Oh, Danny did. Okay, yeah. He like steps on Alpha Ock. Yeah, and there also was like Alpha Ock fighting. Uh, wait, who he fought against another shapeshifter, right? Oh, Chameleon Boy.
Yes, yeah, because and then while Chameleon Boy was fighting him in the real world, that's when they attacked his mind as well. While he was
I love that kind of shit. That's like pure comic book shit, where it's like a character's fighting in the physical world and the mental plane too. Chef's kiss.
It definitely happens in a lot of, and it's a pretty common trope, I'd say, but it's done well here.
Yeah, especially X-Men, right? I mean, like this battle on some levels is kind of like that battle at the end of X-Men Apocalypse.
Okay,
way more exciting and way more engaging.
Yeah,
you know. Because what do you call it? We got the Alpha Ock. So Superboy, he actually isn't on their team right away. He doesn't kill Clark because Clark, he kind of has that memory of Superman. He doesn't kill him right away. But then when he finally meets Ms. Martian, they have this little sequence, this memory sequence, so you see them like kissing a whole bunch of times, and that kind of snaps him out of it.
Yeah, he does fight somebody, like where he stops somebody from attacking Zod. Is Kaldor? Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, yes, they had that little reuniting there and a bunch of flashbacks to old episodes, and then he's kind of, on the right side again.
Yeah. And that's very reminiscent to the early Young Justice stuff, because like he fights against Kaldor in that first episode too.
Yes. Yeah, that was I remember commenting on that a few episodes ago when we were talking about a rewatch.
Yeah.
It was because Kaldor was essentially a new character. And it was kind of establishing him, like how strong he is,
Yeah. And he held his own, man. And
against Zod.
Yeah. Well, that was one thing that they kept kind of doing too. They were like, oh well, the Kryptonians aren't at their full potential yet. You have to wait for the sun to get them. It was a little weird because like at one point so they have Feora and they have Ursa, right? And Feora comes out of the Phantom Zone at one point with Non. And she's all cut up because that Devourer had attacked her.
Yes.
And she comes out and it's nighttime and she heals up kind of like immediately,
Yeah. So I think just because we don't see the sun's radiation is still there, though, I think. And that's what's giving him the power. But, they mentioned it being kind of like a battery. So if you're wondering, like, well, why was Clark at like full power so quickly? Because he was at full power at some point recently. And he just kind of like needed a little boost, but where the others, although it does seem kind of odd because they seem like they were there for a couple hours at least, it just takes longer. I mean, they've been out of they've never had this kind of power source before in their lives. They've also been in the Phantom Zone for 40 years. So
right, yeah. And just to see Clark like back at his full potential, we're going to talk about the boys, in a couple of minutes too. But like when you think about that sort of that godlike what Superman embodies as far as power, it's so exciting to see him go from like weakened because of kryptonite to just like fully charged, and you're like, oh man, you guys are so screwed, Yeah.
What I really like too is that they had like a little battle cry scene where Drew Zod and Lord Zod yelled out for Krypton, and they said for Earth, and it was nice.
Yeah, the House of L, yeah, hell yeah. And actually there was one line that Drew Zod said that was this really cool line where he's talking about Jor-El could have sent Kal-El to New Genesis, but he would have just been a mortal living amongst gods, and he sends him to Earth instead, so he could be a god amongst mortals or something like that. And I just thought that was a great framing device right there. It was really great,
The thing about that though is I kind of wonder. It seems like when Lord Zod first finds Drew Zod and them in the Phantom Zone, he has to explain to them about the Yellow Sun, what it'll do. So I'm kind of wondering, I mean, did Jor-El know or not?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever been explained in comics before. But you're right, though. That is a very interesting take to look at it. Like, why not send them somewhere that's known rather than unknown? But I guess also previously, how do we know that the Kryptonians even knew the new gods necessarily?
Yeah, well, I mean, going along with your point, like the almost in every single adaptation of Superman, there's never the idea of like they were in touch with other races. It's always like they're kind of isolated on Krypton, right?
Yeah.
And if anything, they were in contact with other races like hundreds or thousands of years ago. but in the present day, they're not in contact with other races. But this is establishing that they had a connection with New Genesis. And then almost in every adaptation of a Superman story, there's the idea that like Jor-El does know that the sun is going to make him strong, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Now that you even mentioned it, I think I can even remember hearing that before. But in addition to your comment about, having connections there, we know that there was a Green Lantern assigned here in this. I don't feel like that's ever been something in the comics before.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I know that with Tamar Ray, it is established that he is the Green Lantern of that sector in the comics. But I think in the comics, it's always like Krypton is like isolated or it's like by itself and that they're not interacting, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of cool. Like they always make these little twists, these changes to the lore, but it just works for the story they're trying to tell. It's kind of like the ultimate universe, you know, where it's like they keep what works and they tweak it a little bit. And I think it just is so good for this fucking show.
Yep.
You know? So then let's see. I also, speaking of Superman adaptations, I like when they use the boom tube or like I guess the Kaiser Thrall to open up the portal to the Phantom Zone, and they're just kind of like dropping Kryptonians in there, like they're playing skee ball with Kryptonians, like oh, you know. It just kind of reminded me of the end of Superman 2 when they just kind of throw the Kryptonians into the pits of the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah.
Were you satisfied with that ending with the Kryptonians?
Yeah, I kept saying, like, one of the questions they asked at the end of our last recording about Young Justice was, can they wrap up Zod in an episode? If they do, is it satisfying? Is he going to be a major player in an upcoming season? And I think, they wrapped it up. They did it. It was satisfying. There was enough time for an epilogue. I don't think the episode ran any longer than a normal one did. But, yeah, I was very satisfied. I think, if you include, the wedding scene here, I think, and if you would potentially remove the seeds they planted for the future, this could have been a satisfying series finale. But it looks like they, and I may feel like that if it does happen to get canceled, but it seems like they intend to continue.
Yes. Well, let's talk about those seeds that they planted. So, basically, everything after the battle I thought was excellent. My favorite part was the tying everything up with Metron.
Yeah. So I was a little lost there, I guess.
Okay.
So I know Metron runs his experiments, all this other crap, but so Rocket gets transported to Metron's dimension. Metron helps Rocket. And then I guess he intended for Lor-Zod to steal the time sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, fuck. And that's where the state that little ash comes from. Okay.
Yeah.
But why did he want to do that?
I think it's because Lor-Zod went to his dimension and tried to steal his stuff and like sort of humiliated him and messed with his dimension. It's like payback. Yeah. Like because he's like Uatu, where he can't really get involved or he chooses not to get involved. But in this case, I think it was like personal for him.
Yeah, it seemed like he was pretty involved.
Yeah. And I mean, when Lor-Zod ends up in that little underground cave with the lava and Superboy's about to blow up, and then the bomb goes off, I was like, oh shit, are they gonna kill him off? And like they didn't just kill him, they like burned his skin off and
he got vaporized.
Yeah. It's super intense, but I mean, I'm kind of glad he's gone because he was a good villain.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
So then we have that whole sequence, and then there's a couple of things that were kind of confusing to me too. So Ursa gets taken away by the eye of whatever the fuck the eye, the Emerald Empress's eye.
Yes.
And it takes her to Daxam. Now, are you familiar with Daxam in the comics?
Not very much. No. It does sound very familiar, but it's a very faint memory.
Sure. When Green Lantern was at its height recently, or well, not recently, like 10 years ago now, with Jeff Johns, they had a Daxamite Green Lantern. And essentially the Daxamites are like Kryptonians, where if there's like a yellow sun, they'll get supercharged up and they'll be super strong, they'll be invulnerable, they can fly. And he was this really awesome addition to the Green Lantern Corps. He was like one of my favorite characters. But it's the same kind of thing where they don't have a yellow sun naturally, and so they're not just flying around the universe conquering people. So it's weird to think that the Emerald Eye would take her to that planet. Like, I don't know if the idea is that like she's gonna get her own army of like Daxamites to be kind of like the Kryptonian army. I'm not sure.
Or I mean, I guess she can't start a whole new race there because she's only one, even though she is carrying Lord Zod at the time.
Right. I totally forgot that she was pregnant with him too. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. And then like a similar thing happens with Ma'al Fa'ak, with McGann's brother, where like the Apocalyptian New Gods bring him to Durla, which is like the planet of the Durlans, and it's like, were they implying that he was gonna like create the Durlan race? You know?
No idea.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense because it's like they're shapeshifters and Martians are shapeshifters, but it's like I don't know. I don't know what the implication was there. You know?
Yeah, it seems like they're. I mean, it definitely seems like they could draw from that in the future, or it could just be like an Easter egg that sort of explains how those races came into being.
Yeah.
But it would be weird though. Like I feel like if they were gonna be like progenitors of an entire race of some kind, like I feel like they would have to like go back in time or some shit. You know, like what are they gonna do in a couple of years?
Yeah, a whole lot of banging, and I mean, who's he gonna bang? You know, unless there's a whole bunch of creatures there that he can bang, and maybe Martians are really potent. I don't know. You know, but but speaking of that, I was wondering too because I think Grey Wind is the Apocalyptian New God that brings him there, and it's like, how come Ma'al Fa'ak was with Darkseid's forces, but then all the other Kryptonians were with the Light?
It seems there were a deal. So I think somebody's I can't remember who said it, but they said the Apocalyptians only required one of the Kryptonians and something else, and then the rest, the Light are allowed to keep all the other ones in those cells. So I guess the Apocalyptians got who, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and Zod is a prisoner of the Light.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, you're right. It's still kind of that negotiation between Vandal Savage and Darkseid.
Yes.
Okay. That answers that. So then the wedding itself, after all this, like kind of planting seeds, the wedding was this great sort of celebration of the whole show, kind of giving us little glimpses into all the different story arcs that have happened. You kind of caught me up on some of the characters. I didn't recognize every single person in the audience. Did you?
I had to look up a lot of them because when I was watching, I'm like, wait, who the hell is that? But they do a really good job of. I mean, there are so many characters and side characters, to help with the world building of the show, and they literally brought all of them back.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up the whole like Happy Harbor High, and I just like completely forgot that part of the show.
That's like the first half of the series, like all that stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, it was cool, and I was really happy for Miss Martian. I was actually kind of surprised that she stayed in human form for the wedding.
Yeah, I was too, actually. Yes, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever they want.
Yeah. So, did you have? Whoa! We almost forgot this one juicy nugget, man.
Yes.
So Black Canary's sitting there and she's talking to the other heroes, and she's like, "Well, what the fuck? What was the cause of the conversation? I can't remember now."
They mentioned Gar, and they mentioned just people having. Oh, and I think they might even mention Calder. Like they just mentioned people having a hard time, a place they need to like relax and unwind and feel safe. And they mentioned like Sanctuary, and which implies Heroes in Crisis, which I don't think Heroes in Crisis was a bad idea.
Right.
But I just think people hate it so much because of what they made a certain character do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that this, and like you mentioned here, Greg Weisman responded to some angry Twitter people. I think this show has kind of shown that it can take something that's not as well received and make something good out of it.
Yep. Yeah. So I think about Tom King a lot, actually, and we can kind of talk about him for a second. I feel like his main thing that he does is like break down established characters and like really break down their life to where like the worst things happen to them. And in some cases, you also kill off main supporting characters. Here's some spoilers for his Batman run. He like kills Alfred in his Batman run, and he is the writer of Heroes in Crisis. And I think we can go ahead and spoil Heroes in Crisis. I think if anyone's watching our videos, they probably have read it. If not, turn this off now. But like he makes Wally West, the Wally West Flash, accidentally because of his powers and just stuff he's been dealing with, kill a couple of different heroes at this sanctuary place that they created. And a lot of people like me are big fans of Wally West. He was my Flash, I mentioned last time. And so like this kind of deconstruction, I love like Tom King's Vision story. I think that's excellent. And
Tom
I love
Vision and Miracle Man.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. That like it's good, but I feel like every single thing he does is that,
Yeah. Since you mentioned that deconstruction thing, I can kind of see that in both of those stories. So
yeah. I mean, I just read Adam Strange, right? It's called Strange Adventures, but it's about Adam Strange that he did. Yeah. Same creative team as Mr. Miracle, and it's the same kind of thing where like Adam Strange has this like dark secret, and what is his secret? And like he's kind of like a war criminal basically. It's real dark stuff for a superhero story, and it's kind of like in the vein of Watchmen, and I just kind of feel like you don't need to always have that. And I think that one of the good things about Young Justice is it can be very mature and adult, but it's not like overly serious like the Zack Snyder Justice League stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it gives a proper weight to serious subjects where the Snyder stuff is like ultra serious and it's too serious for its own good. Yep.
Yeah, very good point. And like they tackle serious stuff on the CW shows, but it's so like melodramatic and over the top. And it's kind of funny because on like an animated show like Young Justice, it's done with like you said the right word. I think you said weighted. Like it's just the right balance where it's not like melodramatic or it's not overly serious. It's just right. Yeah. And it's like realistic, but yet it doesn't like just take over everything. And Heroes in Crisis is just such a deconstruction kind of thing, where it's just like taking apart multiple DC characters. And I can understand why people wouldn't want them to touch that story with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
But like you said, if anybody was going to take it and make something good out of it, I think that Greg Weisman and who's the other guy too? Berlanti or something? Berlanti, yeah. Those two guys.
Oh, no. There's somebody else. No.
Oh.
It's oh god. I'm getting my shows mixed up. Is it?
Well, I think like isn't Weisman like a CW guy, like who was on Arrow and shit?
Yeah, he's done that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's another Brandon Vietti.
It's Brandon Vietti. Okay.
Not the other one.
Yeah. It's those guys with like the Italian names. You're like, oh, it's that guy. Yeah. But yeah, Heroes in Crisis. It's like you said. If anyone's gonna do it right, this show would do it right. So I'm down for that. Was there anything else you want to say about this potential last episode of Young Justice?
I'm still hoping it's not the last. We didn't really talk about the last epilogue there on Apocalypse with the appearance of Evil Mary Marvel and Kara Zor-El as the new Furies. I know some people don't like Mary Marvel going evil, but I kind of did sort of enjoy that storyline. In was it 52? It was 52 and not Countdown. I can't remember which ones were. I always get them confused because one was good and one was not good, but I don't remember which one had which story anymore. But and then also I guess with Supergirl on Apocalypse, that's kind of harkened back into Superman, Batman, and that's the second volume, I think, with Supergirl came out. Yeah.
No, I think the very first volume of that book is her coming back.
Is Supergirl? No. The first one's is with like Lex Luthor as president. It's the second arc. That's Supergirl.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. And they made a movie of that. They made an animated movie of that too.
Yeah. I remember watching that. Yes.
Yeah. But what I was going to say was the Mary Marvel thing. I think that was in Countdown where she became evil, and because she's evil in Final Crisis, and Countdown is like it goes into Final Crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I actually did like that. I liked her becoming evil in the comics. I liked kind of her design. It's a cool idea to do that with that character, and they just did not show her transition to that at all in the show.
Well, they hinted at it on the last episode that she was in. They hinted at I guess Granny called out to her. It was some voice. So
yeah, no, Granny was talking to her and like talking about like training her, doing something with her. Yeah. So there's that, and then of course there's Supergirl. But I was going to ask you. So do you think the implication is that Supergirl was sent into the Phantom Zone by her father to like survive Krypton being destroyed?
Yeah, I think that's a good possibility there. I can't imagine why else she would be in there. It doesn't make sense. But her, if whether or not she was involved, I mean, I guess they're saying she was involved with Zod's people, but that could certainly help to influence her towards a more evil nature, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's weird that they wouldn't have shown her. I feel like they should have showed her, and rather than just surprise us with that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. But I mean, it's cool. It's cool to have like this new character who's kind of around the age range of the main Young Justice characters, and then she's as powerful as Superman too. So I would love a 5th season of this show, man.
Yeah, hopefully. That same article that I mentioned they said the numbers are very good. They said HBO tends to renew shows within 2 months of its finished airing. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not renewing Raised by Wolves that me and Danny covered.
I heard about that. That sucks.
Yeah.
I didn't finish season 1. I have to go back to that, or maybe not because it didn't finish.
Well, yeah, who cares, right? Well, so that wraps up us talking about a half an hour animated show. So now we're going to talk about 4 hours of a live action show.
Oh my god! Right? I don't know how we're gonna. The notes you wrote are fantastic. I think this is a great jumping off point here, but there is so much to cover about this. We've never talked about this show officially before, and you know this is season 3. I haven't watched. I haven't watched season 2 since it finished airing. You know, over a year ago. So my memory's a little fuzzy, and I read the comics. I read the entire series shortly after season 2 ended. And I was refreshing my memory on all the differences between the show and the comic before this, but there's so much to go through and process.
Yeah, it's been a lot. They released 3 episodes, last week, and then they did 1 episode today. The show is fantastic. It's like one of my favorite superhero adaptations ever.
Yeah.
We did on our show cover Diabolical.
That's right. You're right. Yeah. Yes. Good point. Yeah, and this is one of those shows I love the 4 episodes we've seen already. They're all fantastic. This is one of those rare occurrences where I think usually whatever you see or read first of a property you tend to like more. I think there are things that the comic does better, and I think there are things that the show does better. And I think I'm leaning more towards the show now, though. This time around.
Yes. I am a huge fan of the show. I think it's one of those situations, in my belief, that like the show is actually superior to the comic. But that's for everyone's taste. Sounds like you might be kind of on the fence, or but like,
I mean, have you read the whole series or no?
No, not the whole series.
So one of the things I love about the comic, and I'm not going to ruin this, but there is something that they see throughout the entire series that's like a huge part of like the ending that they can't do in the show.
Okay.
And I'm just baffled by it. Because it was like a huge part of the comic, and they changed it.
Okay.
So, and I don't know. I mean, I might have to mention it at some point here when we're going through these points, but I'll leave it at that for now.
I'm curious. All right. Well, why don't we? Okay, we're covering 4 episodes. Brian and I are covering 4 episodes, but we're not going to do like episode 1 and then go through episode 2. We're just going to talk about like specific points that are in all of them. And I just have a list of questions that Brian mentioned before. So, like, basically, with the first episode, the premiere, you had the good guys are finally on top, right? The first 2 seasons, it's like, oh my god, if they get seen in public, they could get killed. It's very tense. They're in hiding at one point for most of the second season. So I felt with the opening episode that the heroes were like a little too reckless with how safe they had become. I think that if you watch the first 2 seasons, go ahead.
They kind of settled into the new status quo a little too comfortably, I suppose. But it seems like a decent amount of time has passed since the last episode of season 2. So, maybe you can credit some of that to that.
Yeah, but I mean, like Huey at like the red carpet event, like right next to Homelander. Like Homelander is so scary on this show.
Yeah,
he's like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, but with a power of a god.
Yeah, fuck. Homelander is so good. He's such a fucking evil bastard.
Yes,
there's no other way. There's no other way to describe him other than an evil bastard.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of another point I had like later down in the notes, but like just Anthony Starr is just so perfect because like he's evil to the point where first off he comes off like he's racist right away. He's kind of like the embodiment of so many of the things that we kind of have issues with like American culture. He kind of like exemplifies it, and the show is like they don't pull any punches. They're like, this is a metaphor for the world that we're living in right now, and Homelander is just like this MAGA hat wearing Superman, right?
Yeah.
And
oh wait, did you?
Oh boy, here we go.
Did you the later on in one of the episodes where after they brought the new members into the Seven, he makes the taco joke, which was clearly a Trump joke.
Yes. There's many parallels to Homelander and Trump, that's for sure. And the main thing from this arc now, this third season, is that he kind of has a defeat in the second season, and he's very like chastised and like he's on a leash now in the beginning of the third season. I'm sorry, and then he kind of has this Trump moment where he has to break the facade, and he just all of a sudden just starts talking about how he actually feels, and the public likes it. And it's that weird thing that happened with Trump where it's like everyone's like, he's telling it how it is, he's actually speaking the truth, but it's like, yeah, he's telling the truth, sort of. He's not playing the same game as everyone else, but he's still the scariest fucking person you could imagine.
Yeah, like he's still like the scariest fucking type of person with, a complete fucking narcissist.
Right.
With the power of a god. I mean.
Right. And that's the cool thing that I was saying, like, about Anthony Starr, is that he's that narcissist, and it's also this idea that he has to be like loved by everyone. He has to be adored by the public, and that actually keeps him from just like fucking obliterating the country or being like Omni-Man from Invincible and like just taking on the world and destroying armies and stuff. But also you have a little bit of sympathy for him too, though, just because he's like lab grown, right? And he was like a test tube baby, and he just didn't have any parents or was not like raised like a regular human.
Yes.
So he's all these things in one. And there's always that public veneer that he has, and then he'll like pull you aside and he'll say something like really fucking horrible to you.
Yeah, the lengths that he goes to manipulate people and to put them under his thumb are insane.
Yes.
You mentioned, what was the most shocking thing that I saw in this, and there are a lot of shocking things in this.
Oh yes.
Honestly, I think the most shocking thing to me, and I couldn't even watch it, was the scene with the Deep and the octopus.
Oh my god!
I couldn't even look at it. I had to turn away.
Yes. Okay. Let's jump right to this point. Because like literally, if you and I wanted to right now, we could have just made a video where it's like the top 10 most disturbing episodes of disturbing moments of the first 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And that octopus thing, I think, is the worst thing.
Yeah.
It's bad.
It's just to let him know. It's like, hey, you're back here, but you're back here so I can fucking use you. And if you want to be here, you have to do this shit. I'm gonna make you do it. I'm gonna watch you fucking squirm. Oh my god! I swear I could not watch the scene in full.
Yeah,
I watched a man crawl up another man's penis and then sneeze and blow him up, and eating a live octopus begging for his life was what got me.
Right. Well, and this is in the notes too. Is like the show does many things right. It's so good, but I think the thing that does the best is that it like does this obscene violence and just like some super depraved stuff. And that's like what Garth Ennis kind of made his name with. You know, he always has the character development and like the character relationships. He's excellent at that too. But it's always like you associate the obscene over the top stuff with him. And this show nails that.
Yes, totally.
That octopus scene is just so hard to watch for multiple reasons. First of all, just the way it's filmed, like the way they shot it, it's like very gross the way they're eating all the fish, and then just seeing the Deep's face. It's like cannibalism. It's like, oh, they're eating his friends, you know. Yeah. And then like the octopus looks cute when he goes to eat it, and just like his face while he's eating it, it's oh my god.
Yeah. Like
and also
he's praying. He said he's praying for his life.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh. And this is actually, I think, my last question on the notes, but like, what's up with the Deep's wife?
Okay, so that was from the arranged marriage sort of thing. Like, so when he was in the Church of the Collective, is that what it is?
That sounds right. Yes.
They were setting him up with potential spouses to kind of boost his image and get him back in the public eye. And although he preferred someone else, they set him up with this woman. But then Victoria Newman blew up the church founder's head, and the church doesn't exist anymore. So I maybe she's still working with whatever agenda the church had, but without the cover of the church itself. So I'm curious to see where that goes. But it seems like also that Homelander is somewhat involved with that, because there was a scene where in a meeting with the Seven where she kind of Homelander kind of leads her into feeding the Deep an answer to a question. I think so. I'm kind of wondering if he's pulling that string there too, because he seems to be doing that with everybody.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes too. Yeah.
Right. So the scene you're talking about is a scene in the most recent episode, and it has like A-Train, and he is trying to like deal with this.
Oh yeah, that racist hero kind of guy. They want to do something about him, and then the Deep says some reason why they shouldn't.
Right, and it's essentially like his wife gave that script of like what he says to Homelander, right? And so like that scene's very reminiscent of the octopus scene, because it's like she's pushing him, like she's definitely manipulating the Deep, and she's like all into what Homelander has to say and that agenda that he has, and that makes that whole octopus scene even worse, because like she's like, yeah, eat the fucking octopus, you know? It's like, oh, it's so fucking creepy. But I mean, we should talk about those other scenes. So like, you know, the first episode, there's some jarring, disturbing things, but then all of a sudden you have this one party with the termite, right? That's the guy in there.
Yeah,
right.
Termite.
You know, and so you can see that he's like gay, or he might even like be bisexual, whatever the case is. But he's got a male partner, and the male partner pulls down his pants when they're in the bedroom alone. He's like, "I want you inside of me." And so it's like, okay, you figure they're gonna do what gay men do, but no, the guy shrinks down like Ant-Man and runs up the guy's urethra, right? So do you think that was like in response to the whole Thanos Ant-Man thing?
Yeah, I think that was kind of referencing that, but at the same time, we can't forget the Ultimates, where Hank Pym kind of does that to the Wasp. I mean, he doesn't blow up, but I mean, like, that was actually in a comic book too, so maybe they're referencing both of those things there. But but in this scene, it doesn't end well for anybody.
No. So like that's in the very first episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the show that I'm watching. This is the really fucked up show that I'm watching.
Yeah, and like this scene also helps kind of set up that status quo too. So we're seeing that the Victoria Newman and her political career is basically that they're they're putting a leash on some heroes. There's like a give and take. Like, you know, they can't touch the 7, but they can kind of take down some of these more problematic heroes that are causing chaos everywhere.
Yeah. And you know, we said that the show doesn't pull punches. It's very much like a metaphor for everything that's happening in our country right now. Like Newman is absolutely like a metaphor for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but it's like the idea that like all of her noble actions are actually because of this like evil thing going on.
So here's the interesting thing about the character of Victoria Newman. So in the comics, there is a character, Victor Newman, and he is the vice president, and he is basically mentally retarded. And he's essentially a puppet of Vought that they're trying to get in office so that they can authorize getting Compound V and super soldiers in the military. That's like the whole goal. So, but it's so interesting that they made it like a kind of like an AOC reference. And it seemed like she had so much autonomy in the previous season, or she had some agenda of her own. But we soon find out that she still is a tool of Vought, essentially. But she's a much more competent one.
Yeah. Yeah. And like her connection is super deep. She's the adopted daughter of Giancarlo Esposito's character. What's his name?
Stan Edgar.
Stan Edgar.
Now, another thing from the comics, I always find this very interesting. So I feel like so Elizabeth Shue's character from the first season, what's her name? Madeline Stillwell? Is it Sitwell or Stillwell? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
she's doing something well. Yeah.
Anyway, her counterpart in the comics is a male, and he's really the antagonist from Vought throughout he's kind of what Edgar is doing here. Stan Edgar is in the comics, but he's only he's not shown much. He's really referenced more, and he's not seen very often. So it's interesting that they kind of gave what that role of Sitwell to Giancarlo Esposito and the Edgar character.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's all these like kind of slight changes from the comics to fit the show, but I think it works really well. And I think that like you're talking about how they want to get the one, the AOC type character Newman, the male version of him in the comics. They want to get him as the VP to be like the puppet. I think in this they're trying to get Robert Singer to be the president.
Yeah. No. Right? So essentially, Dakota Bob is the president. That's his like name in the comics, and he somehow gets paired up. He gets manipulated into having Victor Newman as his running mate, and the whole goal is to get him out of office because he kind of opposes Vought and what Vought wants to do, and they want to install the vice president as their own puppet so they can get like I don't remember if this is exactly in the comics the same, but Edgar mentions that they don't want to be in the superhero business. They want to be in the military weapons manufacturing business. In the sense, they want to manufacture trained soldiers to have superpowers that will obey and follow orders and not run a fucking daycare with all these superheroes and Q points and all this other shit.
Yes. That's maybe one of my favorite lines in these 4 episodes where he points out, because that's the heart of the show, is that the way that superheroes are, the way that superheroes probably would be in the real world, is that it's like a fucking daycare where there's just these loose cannons and you have to kind of keep them in place because they think of themselves as gods. They think of themselves as like movie stars, and they kind of have that movie star attitude, that rock star attitude, and you just have to kind of keep them in line, you know? That like sums up this show so much,
Yes.
And then just like a little side thing I really like, because Eric Kripke is the showrunner for The Boys, and then like Bobby Singer was a big part of the show Supernatural. He was like almost like a father figure for the 2 brothers on Supernatural, and he's played Robert Singer on this show.
Yes,
the same actor. Yeah. I like that. And then of course that brings us up to Jensen Ackles, who was on Supernatural, and now he's come on over to this show too. And Soldier Boy is such a big part of this season so far.
Yes, although he's more a focus of the season. He hasn't been shown all that much yet.
No.
This is like a huge departure, I feel, from the comics. So Payback exists in the comics. You know, they're obviously an Avengers parody. And that whole scene with the flashback, that basically did happen. But in the comics, the Soldier Boy is like a legacy hero. There've been a few different ones, and that whole thing did happen. Like one of the flyers went up in the air, and then they got spotted, and the whole fucking place got annihilated.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but the current Soldier Boy is a different person.
Oh, okay.
So they don't do that whole like Captain America, or I feel like they kind of did like a Captain America Winter Soldier kind of thing, where
They absolutely did.
captured him and whatever. That's not present in the comics, and Soldier Boy doesn't do that much. And whatever he did to Kimiko, that did not happen in the comics. That's totally fresh and new here.
Okay. Yes. So that's the kind of thing, since that just happened in episode 4, that's the kind of thing that we could speculate about. But essentially, is there any mention of a thing that can kill Soups in the comic?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's got to be, because it's a very dense 75 issues, and I literally read them in like 2 or 3 weeks. So
shit.
Like I was just trying to like study up here before this. I was looking at skimming through the pages, so I don't remember it.
Yeah. Well, what do you call it? What happened to Kimiko is like basically that, you know, Soldier Boy, who everyone thought was dead, he's alive and he's been held prisoner by Russians, and like he's in this like canister, and they let him out, and then essentially like he like lets out a blast, and I'm assuming that the Russians, whatever they did to him, was they like engineered it to where he would create something that could nullify someone's compound V powers. That's what I would assume.
Yeah, that sounds like a good assumption.
Because like Kimiko, her powers that she has are like kind of like Wolverine, but with strength too instead of claws.
Yeah,
I mean, she can heal better than some of these other people can.
Yes. So in the comics, another big departure here is that essentially all of the boys have those powers. That's like the baseline. They'll take a shot. It's a one-time thing, and they just have powers, and they can all do the same thing essentially. So, and this is one of the things I like better about the show is that they didn't do that. Sometimes it seems it's like a weird thing to juggle in the comics, is what, you know, a lot of things just devolve into fist fights, and maybe there could have been better ways to handle it. And I think the show handles the conflicts and the peril the characters face a lot better than the comics do.
Yeah, I agree. I remember like just reading the early comics, and they had powers like right away, and now it's like, oh, Butcher has powers because he has this like temporary compound V, and that's also a departure there. That's like a temporary thing. Speaking of Butcher having those powers, there's this great sequence in this last episode, in episode 4, where he shows everyone essentially, because they're taking on this like Russian soldier squad, that he has powers, and so he's like bulletproof, and then he starts using the laser eyes, and everyone's looking at him. And what I just loved was that Huey had stolen the compound V and took some himself, and so I didn't even expect him to start to power out too. Were you expecting that?
No, because that's very different from the comics. Huey, it's kind of like he's kind of surprised by it, and he's just given the shot. He didn't ask for it. He didn't know it was coming. It just happened. And he really, in one of his first fist fights, he like punches through a guy, and it really fucks him up. And he essentially just doesn't want to kill anybody. He wants to be a pacifist. He wants to stop these people, but he doesn't want to hurt anybody himself necessarily. So for him, for the character in the show to seek that out is weird, but I totally get it, and I think it works because they've constantly showed him being emasculated by Homelander and even his own girlfriend and Victoria and everyone around him. So I totally get it, and I think it works here, but it's very, very much a departure from the comics and the version of the character there.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that whole point, because like even Supersonic, who isn't necessarily like intentionally trying to do it, emasculates Huey as well. And Supersonic's this character they introduced in the first few episodes. Spoilers, he only makes it to the 4th episode. he knew Starlight when she was just beginning her career, and he kind of had like a boy band type persona when he first started out. And he's on this show that is essentially like, you know, America's Got Talent or American Idol, where he's trying to become a member of the Seven. And Huey, like you said, is like emasculated because he's stepping in and he's got that connection with Starlight because he's a soup, she's a soup. They have this history together, and Huey's kind of like, oh, how do I compare to that? Were you shocked to see that he was dead by the 4th episode?
No. Well,
No?
yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe. I like the development though, because it seems like what they did was that they set it up in the first few episodes that the heroes are kind of on top, they're doing good, and then slowly but surely Homelander starts to remove his own leash.
Yeah.
And I really liked, you know, we mentioned before how he likes to just have people under his thumb, and people just kind of just do whatever he wants just to get in his favor. And we see that with A-Train here. So like Starlight and Maeve are kind of like anti-Homelander, and they want to see him stop because they realize he's nuts and you know, he could destroy the world. I mean, he basically threatens to. It's like, hey, you know, you release these pictures of me or this video of me, and you know, there's nothing holding me back. I'm fine with being you know, destroying everything. I'll go blow up your town. I'll kill your boyfriend. I'll blow up Manhattan just for fun.
Yeah.
Showing how far he'll go, and it's just like, and that's another point to how good of a villain he is. So the reveal that because Supersonic tried to kind of recruit A-Train to the cause, and we saw that A-Train kind of lost favor with Homelander when the Deep showed up, because they had a little scuffle, and Homelander helps up the Deep but leaves him on the ground. So he sells out Supersonic and Starlight and Maeve just to gain Homelander's favor, and then you know that they kill Supersonic and for it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like to me, like, yeah, everything you just said is true. The way that they set up Supersonic, it seemed like he might either be like loyal to Starlight and he's going to be there with her. They might even part of this like battle where it's like a whole bunch of soups taking on Homelander, or he might be like the others and like actually betray Starlight. And so when Homelander was like, I want to show you this special view, and he brings Starlight up to this rooftop, I thought it was going to be like a threatening thing. I didn't think that like Supersonic was just going to be on the roof, like his head smashed in, he's all burnt and stuff too.
Yeah, I think it was like ripped off too or something.
Yeah, just fucked up. And it's like, you know, you try to even imagine what that looked like when it happened, and it's just like, oh god damn. Yeah. But yeah, he's such a monster, and it's so interesting because there's all these different characters that act different ways towards it. They're the ones that like realize how dangerous he is, and they're like, well, we have to play this game because he will just kill us. And then there's the other ones that sort of like will do whatever they can because they know that he's also the key to their like fame and stardom and stuff. And like the Deep is the main like kind of joke character that fits into that mold. And then A-Train, there's a little bit of tragedy with him because you can tell that he's like a little bit more redeemable than the Deep. But like especially with A-Train, they have this little side story now where he's trying to like build up on his like African roots, and or like that he's, you know, pro-black and stuff like that, or, you know, like trying to get the black community heard. And then, you know, he's getting shot down by Homelander, who's like this white Aryan guy, right? But he, you know, you always kind of think that he's going to maybe have a heroic turn too, but A-Train kind of is always looking out for himself, you know?
Yeah. And also that's I think that's some great character development, a great arc for him. In the comics, he's just kind of more kind of like a side character there that just comments on all the shit. Like him and there's a character that they didn't have on the show, Jack from Jupiter, who's essentially like Martian Manhunter. They just kind of like are on the sidelines, and they just kind of like comment on everything, and they're not really super involved with any of the stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's kind of amazing because there's so much going on in this show, right? Where, you know, it's commenting on all. There's a whole episode where they're just like in a gun convention, and it's all about like America's obsession with guns. There's a character named Gunpowder. He's like this Second Amendment nut. you know, and then there's the whole African American thing. They do this thing with A-Train where like it's like essentially like a recreation of the Kardashian Pepsi commercial with the protest. I mean, it's just like, oh god, it's so bad. Yeah, what the fuck was I gonna say about this? It was like what you just said about the Jupiter guy though. Like they try to do so much, and there's so much that's happening on the show, and yet like we haven't even covered like half of the characters. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much shit. Like and there's even like these cameos and stuff that we haven't even talked about. I mean, fucking Charlize Theron is in the first episode as Stormfront, right?
Yep.
Billy Zane is in the second episode cameoing as the head of that church. I mean, so like nothing goes unsafe.
I don't remember that. Wait, is he like a new head of the church? Because I don't remember seeing that.
No. In both instances that I'm talking about, it's like movie versions of the heroes.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, it was like a movie of the Deep's life, right?
Yes.
But then, so you know, so it just covers everything from you know Hollywood to like religion to you know Black Lives Matters to gun stuff, like everything. There's nothing that's not touched, and even like superhero franchises and our obsession with superheroes, right? Like what's his face? MM, right? I'm not what's MM's real name?
Mother's Milk,
but like what's his like actual name? Marvin. So like we find out that Marvin is like separated from his wife completely because of being on The Boys, and she's got this new like hipster boyfriend. I felt real bad for him when that guy showed up.
Yeah, and he's like super into the Homelander stuff.
Right. And like he's dressed up like fucking Homelander at his kid's party, and you know, they're all dressed up like the Seven, and it's just like that is kind of like what our culture is like today. You know, we're just saturated with superheroes.
Yeah. But
you know?
in this show we can see behind the curtain and see it. Most of them suck.
Yes. And like kind of going back to the whole African American thing too, you know, and seeing behind the curtains, we finally see Black Noir. And I think this is probably the thing that you're talking about that is different from the comic, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we just go ahead and spoil it? Because for me, I was like, wait a minute, that's not who he is under the mask. Do you want to go ahead and tell everybody?
Yes. So, I mean, if you ever have any intention of reading this comic, I think this is a great twist that they introduced in this series. They don't show it till like the second to last arc or so. So, you know, this is a good thing that they planted, and it goes on for a good 50 issues. Black Noir is not black in the comics. He is actually a clone of Homelander, and he was created as kind of a defense mechanism if Homelander ever went rogue. But he sort of goes rogue himself, and you know, there's stuff happens, and you know that's how they kind of wrap up that whole storyline.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's still the potential that could happen, right? Because I mean, granted, he does say at one point when it's the flashback and we see him with his mask off and he's an African American guy, we do see that he says something like, I have this crazy nut allergy, right? And then like that's in response to like the last season where someone like sticks like a fucking like almond bar into his mouth or something, right?
Incapacitate him when Starlight or Huey trying to leave or something.
Right. Like it's probably still the same character from that flashback in the present day, but I mean, maybe it could be the clone thing.
Well,
I mean, who knows?
One of the things, I mean, they heavily imply that Noir dies many times and he's just replaced with a new, fresh clone every time. So my thinking is based on the fact that he was in that Payback flashback, which he was not part of Payback in the comics. He took so much damage, and they cloned him from that and gave him a new body that looks, you know, functions properly, but he has a little bit of brain damage from those injuries, I would say.
Yeah, right. Because when they show him again, like in the present day, he's like drawing a cartoon or something, right?
Yeah, because he was really one of the only competent fighters in that battle there, other than Soldier Boy. The others were all kind of like just friendly firing everywhere, basically.
Yeah, and I mean it's crazy, right? Because you said before they're like the equivalent to the Avengers. You had the Crimson Countess; she's sort of like the Scarlet Witch. Then you had Swatto, who was essentially like
The
the
Wasp.
Wasp, but like a
Yeah.
guy, right? And then you had the TNT twins. I wasn't sure like which I mean, they seem like they're the Wonder Twins, but like from DC.
Yeah. So Payback was a lot more direct of a Avengers reference in the comics. They had a guy named Tech Knight who was basically like Iron Man, but he was sort of Batman too. And then they did show you. They've mentioned Tech Knight in the show, but they haven't shown him. And then how the Deep got into the Church of the Collective was from Eagle the Archer, and he was kind of like the Hawkeye kind of analogy, and he was on the team as well. And then Stormfront was actually he was like supposed to be like Thor, but German and Nazi.
Okay, and Stormfront was a man.
Stormfront was a man. Yeah, Stormfront was not a major focus of any arc really. Like he was, they definitely fought him and all that, but he was not a big focus of anything like the show did it. And I thought the show did it fantastically last season.
Yes. Well, so that kind of brings it. I had all these notes, and we sort of jumped around. We did them in different order, but like one of the notes I wanted to bring up was: were you surprised that Stormfront was still alive and like being held hostage by Homelander?
Yeah, I mean it's totally on par for the show to have her, be have a single limb and be burned, be kept on life support, and still servicing the Homelander.
Yes.
That was pretty fucked up too. But still, I'd still put the octopus thing higher up there.
Right. There's like the octopus thing, the penis hole thing, the hand job from the decrepit, destroyed woman thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff. Oh, well, there's all the stuff with the dildos in this last episode.
Yeah, there are a lot of dildos in this, and I think there's kind of like not a running gag. One of the Russian mobster, little Nina, she's a big character in one of the arcs, but they're kind of using it very differently. But she had there was like a whole thing with her with she had a lot of dildos. So maybe they're trying to use that, but in a slightly different way in the show. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Well, it what do you call it? There's that, and then there actually was one scene that we didn't mention that was really fucked up too, but it wasn't that sort of like that over the top, like look how ridiculous it is, but it was just really disturbing. Was when Newman runs into this guy that knows who she is, and then she uses her power on him, and like his face, like the bottom of his face gets blown off. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was almost like the Soul Reaver dude.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so like I thought that was really disturbing. It was hard to look at that, I thought.
Yeah, because they had him trying to move his jaw with what was left there. That was pretty disturbing too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I know we kind of like jumped all over the place and stuff. Was there anything else that you want to talk about with these 4 episodes?
Yes, I want to. We talked a lot about how good Ryan Starr is as Homelander, but I want to talk about how good Erin Moriarty is as Starlight. One of my favorite things they did here. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but they did so well. Was I think it was episode 3. They have her start out as a child, and like a hero pageant, and she kind of dances to Britney Spears' "Hit Me Baby One More Time." And you kind of see her like she doesn't want to be doing it. She doesn't want to be putting herself out there like that. She kind of like closed her fist behind her back to kind of keep it all in and keep the smile on. And then she goes through so much fucking trauma from Homelander. Like there's so many shots of her just sitting there in just fear, and she's so good at displaying that. And then at the end of the episode, they end with that song. And when Homelander on the show says, my new love, Starlight, Homelight, and just the look of shock on her face. And then she does that thing that references the fist behind her hand there. And what she's enduring is insane. And she is pulling that off so goddamn well.
Yes. I totally agree. Do you know what she's been in besides this show? By chance?
No, not Daryl. Jessica Jones.
Oh, really?
She was like one of like the neighbors in Jessica Jones. Like she was in a couple episodes.
Okay.
There's something else. that I've seen. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, yeah. But that's kind of the beauty of a show like this, and shows that are like kind of a step above and beyond others are when you have these crazy relationship dynamics where like someone has to kind of kiss up to someone or like be under someone's thumb, because if they're not, then like they could just be like brutally murdered or something horrible happen to them. That is always such a like really interesting thing to watch, and it is only like so much more impressive when you can see that look in the person's eyes, and like they're putting on that fake smile, but you can still tell that they are just like just scared out of their mind, terrified. I think like when they do that scene where Homelander does put his arm around her and say hashtag Homeland, like you said, one of the people that's filming is like, can you do that next time, do it again, but like not as terrified, or did they remember they say something like that, or like
second take? Yeah, so she is equally as good as smiling through the pain and the fear as Homelander is as good as smiling through, like, you know, with the crazy eyes sort of staring down the barrel, you know.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so then yeah, one last thing I'll bring up then too, and we haven't even talked about Butcher or anything like that, but
oh my God, yeah. We haven't talked about the main character.
yeah, the main guy. But like with Homelander, the first episode they kept trying to play up, oh well, he was with a Nazi, but he's just a man, and he was able to make mistakes because he's just a man. And you know, it's the idea of that association with Nazis, and it's such a like a mirror up to our current society, because it's like you think that any kind of association with Nazis would just be like, nope, like get rid of this guy, we don't want anything to do with him. And yet with like Stormfront, there are people that believed in her cause, and they're now called storm chasers, right? And like it makes me so happy that like a popular show that's about superheroes, which is like the dominant media right now, has this kind of mirror to society now. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we should probably talk about Butcher for 2 minutes, then we can like wrap this up. But like
before we get into Butcher, I have to drop one more little anecdote. I was reminded about that scene with hashtag Homelight. With the superhero show, one of those contestants was Silver Kincaid. Now, totally different from the version of the character in the comics, but in the comics, she was essentially Jean Grey, but she like went nuts and like killed herself. And it's interesting to me that you know, because you know the modern superhero genre has really been dominated by Marvel and the Avengers, and to a lesser extent DC and the Justice League, and the X-Men have kind of taken a back seat, and we haven't seen really anything with the X-Men, and they've done a whole bunch of X-Men stuff in the boys in the comics, and they haven't really touched upon it all here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do remember them getting up to like an X-Men arc where it was like, you know, the boys equivalent
very early on. Yeah, it was like they make fun of all the freaking different teams they have and the college life. I mean, there is supposed to be a college campusy spinoff of the boys coming.
Oh, really?
Yes, but it seems to be more. It doesn't seem to be taking the X-Men spin on it. It's going to be more like this superhero show and like Avenger-y kind of things, rather than the idea of like the mutants and kind of lampooning them.
Is it going to be live action?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Okay, cool. Yep. Wow, that's awesome.
It had some cast. It's been in development for a while, and I know that they like lost like 3 of the leads and it's recast. So I'm hoping that that's not a signal of a troubled production, but you know,
yeah.
We'll see.
Awesome. Okay, well, if it's connected to the same people making it, I'm definitely on board. You know.
Yep.
So just basically Butcher. It's really interesting because like his wife Becca was such a driving force for the first 2 seasons, and just getting Becca, or like getting revenge on Becca, or knowing what happened to Becca, and now she's dead. And you know, instead of going off on this crusade, he actually has to kind of rein it in, just like Homelander does. And there's these like parallels between him and Homelander for the first episode. But then he's the one now that has Homelander's son, and we see a different light to him. He's like a lot nicer. You know, he just acts like a nicer person to Ryan, the son.
Yeah.
And with Ryan, the son, there was like 2 scenes that I really liked. One was very hard to watch, and one was really great to watch, where Like Ryan is talking to Kimiko, and he's talking about how he doesn't like his powers, and she's saying basically the same thing. And that's a whole thing about her arc this season. And then with Butcher, at one point he doesn't want Butcher to leave in the safe house that he's in, but then Butcher essentially like turns on him and gives him guilt about his mother dying, and that makes his eyes turn red, just like Homelander. And it was just so cool to see that he is able to kind of catch himself and not act impulsively like so many of these fucking characters on this show act, you know?
Yeah,
so
but then, then he does kind of say that to the kid at the end because he realizes that he's actually protecting the kid by keeping him away from it. But to the kid's eyes, it's like he's abandoning him. But in Butcher's eyes, he's potentially saving the kid's life.
Right.
Because he knows that he has to do all this horrible shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like that scene was kind of hard to watch, and I've seen that kind of scene a lot, where it's like, I'm being mean to you because I'm really trying to protect you and keep you away.
I mean, he says that to MM at some point. It's like, I picked you because you're a natural born leader and you keep everybody together, so I can be the bastard that I need to be.
Right.
Things done, and that's fantastic. And also, we haven't really mentioned all the other characters, but in general, I think that Frenchie and Kimiko don't really get much of a spotlight in the comics, and I think what they do with them is fantastic in this. And MM kind of does get a little more of a spotlight, and the bottom line here is they're doing a great justice to all these characters, fleshing them out a little bit more than the comics did, I think.
Yeah, really. A really good point. I mean, I know that and so I think that I've only read like less than half of the comics, and so it makes me kind of want to reread it because you're speaking very highly of them, and I think like seeing it as a whole and seeing the whole story, it might make me appreciate them more. I actually really am into the show a lot, and I think the show is superior. I also thought that the Invincible cartoon was superior to the Invincible comic too. So these Amazon shows kind of seem superior to the thing they're an adaptation of. But I mean, so how many more episodes are left for this season then?
So we have four more, and at some point, we've talked about how depraved this show gets and all that, and at some point they're doing Hero-gasm in this season. So I mean, I can't imagine how much worse it's going to get. I really can't.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't even know how they're going to pull that, like how they're going to do that story. Like what would be the inspiration for that?
I don't know, because they don't have, I feel like they haven't really done cosmic level threats here. It's all pretty grounded. I mean, as grounded as you can make superheroes be.
Right.
But the cover in the comics is that they all go off to fight some galactic threat once a year, coincidentally, and then they really just go to some island and all have this giant orgy.
Yeah. I actually remember that. That was like their free comic book day issue from like whatever company put out. Yeah, no, that was like their free comic book day issue was that.
Holy shit. Well, that's the whole arc. The whole arc. So, I mean, it's like 4 or 5 issues.
Well, like the issue 1 of that arc was the free comic book day issue from like
God,
Dynamite.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So me and Brian are going to be here covering the boys for the next 4 episodes, and we're going to be doing it on Fridays because that's when the show comes out. And then we still have to finish up Obi-Wan, and Miss Marvel just started up too. So we're going to finish Obi-Wan, go through Ms. Marvel and the boys for the next few weeks coming up.
Yep. That's your character about mid-July.
Oh man. Wow. Jesus Christ. Time's flying by in the summer already. And it's already like 102 degrees here in Texas.
Oh man. I don't envy that. About 77 here.
I envy that. Cool, man. So I'm going to go shrink down and go run up some guy's urethra, but we will be here next.
Not mine.
Yeah. You stay in New Jersey. We'll see you guys next Friday. Have a good one.